Hi there everyone. Caro-Kann Defense is considered to be one of the most solid openings in chess, and in general, if you are about to face the Caro-Kann Defense, you might expect strategic battle, and let's not be afraid of this word. Sometimes the game can turn out to be pretty dull. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple of ideas that can be used in order to make things more exciting on the board, and also I'm going to show you a couple of inaccuracies or opening mistakes that you might see from your opponents and how to take advantage of those. My name is Mat Kolosowski. I'm an international master from Poland, and let's take a look at what I have prepared for you. So the main Caro-Kann moves are e4, c6, and in this position the classical approach is just to go d4, which is practically always met by d5 by black, and here we have a couple of possibilities as white. Knight c3 oftentimes leads to d takes e4, knight takes e4, and then you have bishop f5 move, knight f6, or knight d7. These three moves lead to very well explored theoretical lines. So this is a huge piece of information there. There is the e5 move, which I also recommend. This is something I play on a regular basis. I find it a little bit more exciting than the casual knight c3. There is also f3 move, which is something people sometimes try, although I think black is pretty safe there, even with a move like e6. And there's also the Panov variation with e takes d5, c takes d5, c4. However, none of this is going to be the subject of our video. People sometimes forget that besides going d4 on move 2, there is also an interesting possibility, an interesting alternative, which is to go knight f3. And here black is going to play d5, and now we play knight c3. This is one of the moves currently, well, lately people have been playing d3 with actually pretty good results. However, knight c3 is the more natural move, I would say, protecting the pawn on e4. And then here comes the tricky part. If black goes d takes e4, knight takes e4, and bishop f5, which is, again, something that people, when playing the Caro-Kann, try to employ. This is basically the common idea. This is how people in Caro-Kann are taught to react. Whenever the knight is on e4, they are just they learn very early that they are supposed to challenge the knight with the bishop, and then if the knight retreats to g3, black is just supposed to go bishop g6. However, there is one problem here. As you see, instead of playing d4, we included the knight on f3, and this makes a huge difference. So if you ever play against someone who is new to Caro-Kann, or he's basically not really aware of those subtleties, it's an easy way to trick him, because right now white has this very powerful move h4, which is also typical for Caro-Kann. The threat is quite simple. White just wants to play h5, and then as a result he's going to trap the bishop. So what black pretty much needs to do is to find another escape route for the bishop, and this is usually achieved by playing h6. Now white could play h5, but after h5 bishop is going to go to h7, and it's not really clear what white achieved. However, we can take advantage of the fact that the knight is on f3 and hit the bishop with knight e5, which is a very aggressive move. And of course black doesn't really want to allow knight takes g6, because that will seriously damage black's pawn structure. With the pawn on g7 and g6, this really looks ugly, and the king is also automatically going to be vulnerable. So this is not really advisable for black. And at this point, black normally responds with bishop h7. However, at this point, white has a fantastic tactical possibility. He can start launching the attack right away. And the main move at this point is queen h5. It's much more precise than queen f3, because after queen f3, you would get your queen blocked by the knight. So knight f6 really parries most of the threats, and it's not so simple for white to proceed with the attack. Instead, queen h5 is a much more precise move. So queen takes f7 is a huge checkmate threat. Basically, black needs to respond to that, and it's not easy to find the right answer. Technically, it is possible to play queen d5. However, this has a massive drawback, because after bishop c4, it's quite clear to see that, well, the queen is under attack. The bishop also puts pressure on the pawn on f7, so in a moment black is really going to have to lose some material, if not the entire game. So black is pretty much doomed in this position. The alternative move is g6, but that even strategically is very unsound. It of course deals with the checkmate threat, however it permanently locks the bishop, so even if this is the only achievement white would get, it's already at least satisfactory. So the bishop on h7 is completely out of play, and already white has a much better game. However, it's not the end of black's problems. What white can do here is to introduce another piece into play, completely disregarding the queen on h5, which is currently being attacked. So white plays bishop c4, and if g takes h5, bishop takes f7. Despite being down a queen, white wins the game. So you cannot really get anything better than that. It's beautiful, it's surprising, it's actually difficult to be dealt with. So at this point, black really needs to play e6. But again, black's pawn formation is really horrific. He does defend against all of the immediate threats, but it's not necessarily going to be a satisfactory position for him. So right now, white is supposed to go back with the queen, and there is no immediate attack, and you can just go back queen e2. You could play queen f3, trying to renew the threat of checkmate, but then again, black just goes knight f6, and there is no immediate pressure. You could try playing knight e4, but I believe that with proper moves, with something precise like bishop g7 or maybe even bishop to e7, black should be doing reasonably well. Well, besides the fact that this bishop on h7 is just an ugly piece. So instead of queen f3, I actually recommend playing queen e2. This is a more poisonous move, because if black tries to develop normally, thinking that, well, the worst is already gone, there is no immediate threat, so let me just try to develop a piece. Well, if that takes place on the board, after knight f6, there comes another surprise for black. Knight captures f7. Basically, in Caro-Kann, and not only in Caro-Kann, if you see such a pawn structure and the king placed on its initial position, if you have some resources, preferably a bishop and a knight hitting in this direction, you might already be looking for some sort of sacrifices on either f7 or e6. In this particular case, this is knight takes f7 that completely destroys black's defense. So as you see, the entire pawn formation gets demolished, and there's a double attack. So if black just ignores the knight, he's going to drop either a queen or a knight. So it's pretty bad in the opening. But if he takes on f7, it's even worse, because there is immediate checkmate. Queen takes e6, and the king is forced to go to g7, and then queen f7. Game over. So that's pretty bad. And of course, black doesn't have to fall for that. Black can still try to defend the pawn on f7. For instance, he can make a move like queen to c7, or maybe even play this ugly move bishop g8. But whatever happens, strategically, this is already a very good position for white. The most important factor is that the bishop on h7 is completely out of play. So later on, you can just proceed with normal development. You can play d3, develop the dark squared bishop. You can castle at some point, and you're expected to have a very good game. In the meantime, black will really struggle with the bishop on h7, and it's hard for me to believe that it's going to be brought into play within the next couple of moves. It will really be a challenging task for black to do something about the bishop. Let me show you one more possibility here in this line. So here, after bishop h7, queen h5, after g6, you could actually instead of playing bishop c4, you could also play with a different strategy, with a different idea in mind. You could try playing queen f3. This is a slightly different move as compared to the bishop on c4. I think both are possible, and here comes another interesting, tricky line. So after knight f6, now you can go queen b3. And this is another interesting geometric idea to be remembered. So basically, white attacks the pawn on b7, but first and foremost threatens checkmate on f7. So again, black needs to, well, at least be careful, because, well, if he plays something which is going to cover the pawn on b7, he's going to get checkmated. If he plays e6, he's just going to lose the pawn on b7, and it's just the beginning of the problems. So here, the best move, it seems that the best move for black is actually to go queen d5. But when that happens, white doesn't really need to be afraid of losing the knight on e5. And this is the tricky part. We first take on b7, and after queen takes e5, what we can do is just this quiet bishop e2 move. And now it transpires that it's not only queen takes a8 that is the threat, but queen c8 is immediate checkmate. So again, black doesn't really have that many options available. So he should play queen d6. Now we play queen takes a8, winning the rook. It's not yet game over, because after queen c7, it's quite clear that the queen is not really going to escape that easily. And if black somehow manages to go bishop g7, then castle kingside, so if white plays something stupid like castles, bishop g7, d4 or d3, castles, and something very, very slow, for example, bishop to e3, bishop to d2, then after knight bd7, the white queen is actually going to be trapped. So you don't really want to fall for that. Instead, after queen c7, white really needs to find a way out. And the best maneuver I have found in this position is just, well, it is pretty extraordinary, but if you look at it, the longer you look at it, it makes more and more sense. So white goes a4, and here after bishop g7, rook a3. So you actually introduce the rook into play so that it supports b7 and provides you with escape route. And after castling, you can play rook b3. Of course, the position is still it's still a wild game, let's be honest. White hasn't castled yet, the king is in the center, the bishop is still on its initial position, the queen is just somewhere, it's gone apple picking really. In the meantime, black has a safe king, but a horrible bishop on h7, so it's not really clear. It's not really about who has a better position, it's who has a worse position, who has worse piece coordination. But in the end, I believe that the material advantage should be the most important factor. So remember that in this position earlier on, this is really a branching point here. You can either play bishop c4, and if black goes e6, if he defends, you will have to withdraw the queen, and then you can try to build the attack once more. Or you can go queen f3, and after knight f6, go queen b3, transferring the queen. So again, two moves here, bishop c4, probably more direct threats, and it's even though black can defend the pawn on f7, he's likely to miss the knight f7 idea. So that's one idea, one concept, and you can alternatively go queen f3 with the intention to meet knight f6 with queen b3. These are two interesting concepts. Probably the biggest drawback of this line is that actually black can still play queen d5, and this time I don't believe bishop c4 is going to be that strong, because after queen takes e5, black should be fast enough to consolidate, so that's not going to be a possibility for white. And it looks like white needs to make another move with the queen, possibly something like that. Still, bishop c4 with the attack on f7 might once more be a huge threat. So a very non-standard position. Probably black needs to a safeguard that anticipate the following move, either by playing e6, just like that, or by playing bishop g7. Whatever happens, I still believe that white should have the upper hand, because even though we lost a couple of tempi, at the end of the day, this bishop on h7, this is just not how you're supposed to put your bishop in the opening. It's locked by the pawn, and opening it might just make black's position even more vulnerable. So even if you do not manage to find the direct attack, you have some strategic bonuses in just connected with the fact that black has very bad piece coordination and the bishop is just out of play. So I hope you enjoyed watching this, and perhaps you will be interested in trying to implement this interesting Caro-Kann line in a couple of games. It's not really a line that should be played on a regular basis, but from time to time it will probably not hurt. Thanks for watching.